You have more religious freedom right now than you've ever had in your lifetime. At least that's what our next guest says, and he should know. Hi, I'm Stuart Shepard. This is First Liberty Live. You recognize Kelly Shackelford, my boss. Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Stuart.
He is the President, CEO, and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. And you're here today to sit on a panel of distinguished attorneys to talk about what? What are you going to share?
Well, really, they're going to ask us kind of where we see things going. In particular, what are some examples of some cases that kind of get that across? And so it's like there's so many, right, to talk about that. I think the unique one would be the situation with the pastors and the churches. Crisavelle and Castle Rock and Gethsemane Baptist and just we've not seen these sort of criminal cases against pastors for doing what they're supposed to do, feed people and help people, and so that. And then the other, I think that is really important strategic case is the Bangor Christian case, because there's this real movement across the country right now on school choice. Right. Texas is about to have school choice. I mean, a lot of states are moving this. Well, most of the private school choices are religious schools. And of course, we won the Carson versus Macon Supreme Court case.
And you would think that would have been the end of it in Maine, but they just kept going.
Yeah, I mean, they said, okay, well, we can't discriminate against the religious schools. We can't ban all the religious schools. So what we'll do is we'll just come up with some things to get rid of the biblical religious schools. We'll say that if you don't have our view of marriage as between whoever, if you think marriage is man and a woman, then you're out.
Yeah.
And we always knew this would be the battle, right? I mean, that they would figure out a way to just have some requirements that would exclude most traditional religious churches, synagogues, whatever. Well, this is it. Bangor Christian is it. And it really is a good situation for us, because if you're going to take a case back to the Supreme Court, to have the same client who supposedly just won, and then they went back in and tried to manipulate things and said negative things about the Supreme Court, which they did, that looks kind of bad. And so this is a really important issue. I think this is a good vehicle to get the issue back. Now, we knew we're in Maine, not friendly courts. We had a very liberal decision below, ruled the wrong way.
And to give a summary of the case, Maine, a very rural state except for the coastline. So if you're in one of those small towns out in the middle of nowhere and there's no public high school, they provide funding from the state to let you go to the school of your choice. Yeah. Could be in the state, could be out of the state, could be in Canada if that's closer, but they said except.
Well, they literally read from the doctrinal statement of the Christian school that's our client. Now, that's a little bit targeted.
Yeah, I think
okay?
So.
But basically, things like, well, if you believe that marriage is a man and a woman, then you're engaged in discrimination. We don't give to Christian schools or any schools that are discriminators. Yeah. And so this gets to the real issue. Can you do this? Well, if you can, then the government can. I mean, what's worse than excluding all Christian schools? It's for the government to pick which Christian schools or which religious schools are okay.
Are religious enough.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what they're doing. And so this case, as school choice is breaking out around the country, this is going to decide whether we really have choice and whether, schools that people want to put their in because of the faith are going to survive or not. And, one of the things Phyllis Schlafly, when she was alive, used to always say, I'm against school choice, because if they start giving money out, then they'll attach strings.
Right.
These are the strings. And the question is, are we going to be able to win on that? And if we do, it's going to free up private school religious choices for people across the country. I think that's a really, really, really important case. The argument went well at the Federal Court of Appeals, but we know this is going to go to the Supreme Court, and so.
I was going to say, it's already been once, it's on the way again. We hope that they'll take it up, especially since the state is just ignoring what the Supreme Court said the first time.
I sure hope so. And so, it's a fun time right now. I think the time to get victories is now. The wind's at our back. We've got a president that just created a religious liberty task force. They're gonna have a commission open for religious freedom across the country. There's just going to be a lot of good things happening for religious freedom. And of course, we're going to be working on judges. They're there for a long time.
Let's talk about that right now, since you brought it up. What is First Liberty doing when it comes to the nominees for places on the bench around the country, particularly at the appeals court level?
Well, 8 years ago, we really felt the Lord calling us to do what we could to help on vetting. And here we are 8 years later, and I think nobody really disputes. We have poured millions and millions of dollars into this. We have the most extensive vetting division in the country. We have more data on federal judges than anyone, and it's so we can make sure if somebody's going on the court for life, that they actually believe in the Constitution and protecting religious freedom.
That would be helpful.
And, one case is important. One judge is hundreds, thousands of cases. 150, 160 judges, that's a lot of cases. And it's a lot of cases over a lot of time.
And that's a culture, is what you're getting at.
Absolutely. When you look at what the administration, what Trump, last time he did 234 judges. This time, probably another 160. That's about 400 judges. That's about half of all the federal judges and life. So this will set the court for the next 20 years. And so, I learned a long time ago, I remember being at the Supreme Court, and the arguments were all right in this case I was watching, but it didn't matter because the court was going the way it was going to go no matter the arguments. Now, this is a different court than we have now.
Right.
And it really hit home to me, and some others that were friends of mine at the time, that, it doesn't do any good to have the right arguments and to have the law on your side if you don't have good judges. And so this is really important. And so we want to do everything we can to make sure that they pick good judges, that there's good information to pick solid judges who protect the Constitution. So we are, in addition to all the cases, we've got 4 cases sitting waiting to hear right now. The Supreme Court's going to take
Let's talk about those, because that's in play right now at the Supreme Court. Just give us a few, for examples that we're waiting to hear whether the court will take them up.
Well, we actually had some wild news today. One of the cases, the Hiddle case, I don't want to get too technical, but there's a precedent called McDonnell-Douglas that, normally if there's evidence to show discrimination, you have a right to get in front of a jury. Well, this case allows the judge to not allow you to get to a jury, even though he admits there's evidence. And that's what we're challenging in Hiddle, which would open up a lot of religious liberty protections, being able to be protected. Well, today there was an argument at the court, and in the court they brought up McDonnell-Douglas in one of the questions. Justice Gorsuch did. The person arguing specifically referred to our case.
Wow.
So, you can see that there's a focus on our case, and what to see. I encourage people to pray for the court to take that, because that issue would affect a lot of cases and really be helpful for people who are the victims of discrimination, like Chief Hiddle. Clear religious discrimination, never allowed to have his day in court. That's not what's supposed to happen in this country.
Real briefly, because you're far more knowledgeable about this than most of the rest of us are, what is the process for the court to take up a case like Fire Chief Ron Hiddle? But just describe the scene for us, and how many justices have to agree, that kind of thing.
There are, over the entire year, there's probably about 7,000 requests, and they take about 60.
Wow.
So, and what does it take to take 60? What they do is they go into a room on like a Friday, and it's just the 9 justices, no one else, no note takers, no additional people. And if they've had an argument that week before them, they'll take a vote on the case. It's, it can change, but there'll be a majority and a dissent, and they'll start writing those. And then they can trade and try to convince people to switch sides, and until the opinion's out, anything can happen, right? The other thing they do, in addition to the cases that were argued that week, is they go through these cert petitions. In other words, please take our case. And they get a lot. And it only takes 4 justices, 4, to grant cert. But, if you're in the 4, you kind of want to make sure you have 5.
Well, yeah,
because
majority.
You'd like to not have them take the case and then rule the way you think is wrong.
Yeah.
And so they're careful. And if one justice is at least wanting this to be looked at further or wants to look at something further, they can push the case consideration to the next time.
Right.
That is what's happened to us with Hiddle.
Okay.
It's been pushed a few times. That's what's happened to us with all of our big cases that were taken. And so it's just a process of 4 members of the court saying, we're not going to take that many, but we think this is one of the ones we need to take.
Real quickly, without going into too much detail, what are some of the others that we have pending at the court, waiting to hear if they're going to take?
There's a number of different ones, and another one that's probably going to be going up soon. But basically, one of them is a parental rights case about whether the government can tell you that you can't bring a claim on behalf of your own children, that the government has to tell you, how to do that.
Yeah.
Which is a total attack on parental rights.
The question there isn't whether it's a good idea, it's whether you have the right to,
yes,
right?
Who's the authority?
Yeah.
And that will really help in a lot of other parental rights situations in schools, because this is actually a school situation.
Yeah.
It's those with disabilities in schools, and whether the parents are allowed to represent them.
So that's one. What's another one?
We have an important case on just, sharing your faith. And a decision below that was really not a good, a good decision that was then overturned, and getting that up to the Supreme Court case to the Supreme Court. We've got, we've just had a case on church autonomy, the authority of the church versus the government. So really, we're going to have one on whether the government can say, well, you can't say something religious because this is our microphone or our property. Well, that's a really scary proposition, because that would mean you couldn't talk about your faith on a sidewalk or in a park. Now, this was the Cambridge Christian case,
right,
where 2 Christian schools were in the state championship, and they were told they couldn't have a prayer.
Over the loudspeaker.
Over the loudspeaker.
Yeah.
And this is the same place where Billy Graham had a revival 40 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, but so it might sound like, oh yeah, that's ridiculous. No, this is really serious, because if you can co-opt private speech and say it's government speech and therefore we can control what we say as the government, then you don't have any free speech. So that would mean anytime you go out on any sort of government property, you lose your First Amendment rights. So there's just a number of big issues that we're trying to get to the court, and they only have so much room. So pray that they take a significant religious freedom case, because we want to be advancing the ball each time. We feel good about the court we've got. They understand religious freedom. They care about religious freedom. It's just a matter of getting the right cases to them.
We are literally in our booth here in the exhibit hall at NRB. And Kelly, one of the humbling things about being here is all day yesterday, all day today, people have just walked up to the booth and just looked me right in the eyes and said, I just want to say thank you for the work that you do.
Yeah.
And it's one after another. It's humbling to have that. How can people pray for our legal team? What are some specific things they can pray for right now to support us?
Gosh, I say pray for the protection of our staff. I used to say pray for our cases, and I'd love that too.
Yeah.
But I think, usually when the enemy comes to attack, he goes after an attorney's children, their wife's health, situations like that. So I say pray for the families of the attorneys and of all the staff here. And then pray for us to find people. It's a good problem, but we're losing some of our people, at least temporarily, into the administration at very high levels, and on the very issues we fight about here. So they'll be great on the inside to stand for religious freedom. But that means we've got to have more people, and finding top people that are willing to make less money to do a nonprofit and stand for religious freedom. God's got to find those people for us. So please pray for that we add to our team who we need to fill these slots so that we can not lose any capacity at all. And then pray for the increased capacity that we're hiring, just for all the eyes we have to have on all the opinions and all things on judges. Okay. Because there's a lot of research, a lot of work, even AI work and stuff to collect information so that we really do know everything about all the judge choices, so that the decision maker, mainly the president and the senators, can make good decisions and pick really solid people and not make mistakes, as has happened in the past. So-and-so is your friend is not a good answer to us. Everybody knows that. We want data. And if you're 50 years old, as most of these people are, we should know who you are, whether you have the courage to do the right thing even when you know it's the right thing. That's really important for judges.
Very good. Kelly, I know you've got a packed schedule this afternoon of interviews and whatnot. Thank you for making time for us.
Thank you, Stuart.
All right, and thank you for watching First Liberty is Fighting for What